Speaking of speaking French, Julian.
Speaking of speaking French.
I had to go downstairs when you and Jack were talking.
Yeah.
Because you guys were both speaking French.
Yeah. And you blushed.
It's so adorable. I can't.
Yeah, you blushed. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why women feel like that. Now you get it.
That's right. She said she said.
No, it's because I say women. I say women. She's like women, not men. Women. Singular.
Will you slide that bottle? I'm not sure, just the bottle. That way. Right? Is that where it was? I don't know. We're probably good.
Right, so you don't want it on it?
I just don't want it in front of your face. I accidentally did that for an entire episode. That was my bad.
It's kind of in your face.
Okay.
Yeah.
Move it like just.
We're professionals.
That's weird.
But so, and she said that because that when you speak French, that when we go back to English, that your English becomes a little extra Frenchy and hard to understand.
No, I was mumbling a lot because you don't speak French loud. You speak English very loud. American English.
Americans speak anything very loud.
Exactly, but
it's
French,
because our opinions totally matter. That's why.
I hope that's going on the camera.
Yeah, we're just going to keep this.
Okay, there you go. So when I speak French, I had to go down about 2 decibels, 10 probably decibels. And so the back and forth between ordering in French and talking to Kyla was interesting. So at the end, I basically found like a happy medium where no one could understand me in French or English. Right? So I would mumble. I would mumble in English and speak way too loud in French.
Okay.
So they all looked at me funny.
Everyone was pissed.
And so I was just talking like this. So it was the back and forth between English and French made me speak like this a lot by the end. So she was starting to look at me funny. And I was like, shit, I need to go back home.
That's good.
Because someone didn't speak a word of French and I had to do everything. Exactly. So
hold on.
No,
like, how many days did you spend in Paris? Like two?
Yeah. So
I've lived in. Never mind.
Exactly. Well, I think you're not making. Okay. So yes, we're in the elevator, and I'm trying to make her count in French, and she's giggling the entire time and not even trying. This is someone who makes fun of my accent. That's not how you say scarcity. That's the one where
You did it.
I did. She still makes fun of that one. She says it's not scarcity. Like, give me a fucking break, right? I watched enough Rodriguez movie to call it scarcity if I want to. So she still makes fun of my French accent on everything, but she won't even try one word in French. C'est un. Yeah, see, she still giggles every time.
It's like the Master P song. Like, is that how?
Yes, something like that. Rez-de-chaussée. Try that one. Exactly. To this day she laughs. She wouldn't even try one thing in French. So I had to carry us the entire time. So yes, my English got messed up.
I am a burden on the
bit.
entire Austrian community. Basically, is how it works for me.
Okay,
so
let's be honest. I'm a burden on the entire Dutch community because I'm not speaking a word
that's
of
true.
Dutch
The
yet.
thing is, there's enough of a precedent here where you can walk in and ask for an English menu, and they're like, "Okay, we'll get them one of the English menus we have on the shelf."
They're making it way too easy.
Yeah, if I go into a restaurant in Austria and ask for an English menu, they're like, we're going to spit in this guy's food. And I'm not giving him a fucking English menu because we don't have them. And I didn't understand anything he said because we don't speak English anyways. And so they just look at me like I'm fucking...
So you've been to France?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Actually, it's not that bad. I'm just haven't been doing my work that
You'd be surprised how many... Okay, so that's how it works. So you have to understand also. It's like the second she starts speaking English, they all start speaking English too. They never speak English to anybody else. But a beautiful woman shows around, and they all start to speak English. I'm like, you motherfuckers.
It's a good way to keep you in your corner.
Yeah, I was like, none of you can watch a video on YouTube in English, but you can all talk to her. Yeah, right. So there's that as well.
All right, so I have no way to segue this into the actual podcast, so we're just going to dive right in.
Fuck it.
Speaking of...
Gut Flora.
Because
that's why let's talk about food for a second. Yeah.
Let's talk about food.
Fuck, it was good.
How was the food?
Oh my God. You don't realize how much you miss it until you get the first bite. And you're like... it was so good. God knows I hate French people, but man, do I miss Paris. For that. I wouldn't last past 3 days, but... it was so good. The food, it's just, I love the Dutch, man, but they just don't know art is not their thing.
I've noticed the Dutch food culture seems like it's a very much a mixed mash of lots of other things.
And it doesn't have taste.
Yeah.
Like we got anything from crepes to anything. Like we got real ham. It's just everything tastes so good.
Yeah.
Like any crepe, anything. Oh, it was so good, man. Like the croissant. Well,
Yeah.
that's how you say it, by the way. You say croissant. You don't say croissant. You say
It's
croissant.
it's pronounced croissant-wich. It's a Burger King.
A croissant. Yeah. It was so good. Like there's butter on everything.
See, in Austria, I think I eat just pork.
Yeah. That's basically.
that's most of it.
Welcome to Germany-ish.
Fortunately,
types
I'm
of-
pretty
yeah.
good. I'm pretty good with it. I seem to handle pork pretty well. And
This was almost. This is dangerous because we're 3 hours away by train.
yeah,
Shit.
you're like, is it worth it for dessert?
No, but for dinner.
you might be onto
Stay
something.
the night.
For dinner, drinks on the train on the way back.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think it will happen at some
Yeah.
point. Yeah. It was that good. I was so happy. It'll be a lot harder to stay off the bread in
Yeah.
Paris. Yeah. Okay, but we walked like I don't know 10 kilometers a day, so that was good. Yeah,
Bread-worthy day.
that made for the difference. Yeah.
So,
Anyway,
all right, we got a lot of stuff
Yes.
to get into today. The main subject we wanted to touch on today was going to be generally behavior, right? Is that the framework? we
yes.
wanna go
So
with?
people have asked us to talk way more about the gut flora and stuff like that because it is a very interesting subject. And in the last podcast, we talked about food and behavior, and I really want to go back toward that because I feel we fundamentally misunderstand food.
Yeah.
And how to basically deal with that. I think we deal with food incorrectly. I mean, most people we know do.
Yeah.
Because we misunderstand what food is and how the body processes it and what the goal of food is as well. Well, because we see in the autoregulation group, the biggest change I've seen is not special in body composition. We've seen that, but it's not the biggest change. It's in the change of behavior. That's what struck me the most.
Yeah.
So I want to go about that.
And we've seen, as far as behavior changes, what are the types of things that we are seeing a lot? I mean, we're seeing everything from like food cravings completely changing.
Gone. Change the taste changes.
Taste of food.
People that used to have like let's say 2 glasses of wine, now they have one and say, oh my God, it's so sweet. I can only have 1 cup. So I know for myself the change of smell.
Yeah,
Right.
I've noticed
By
that
the way,
as well.
all this is a behavior thing.
Yeah.
Right. So cravings are gone. Like the boredom eating, emotional eating, like binge eating. Like we had one woman now. She said at some point she was having issue with orthorexia. If people don't know, it's when people go nuts on food, but more toward the healthy way.
Yeah.
Where they start to eat less and less stuff and more precise
And
because
it's
it's
very,
healthier.
very, very managed. Yeah.
Yes, extremely managed stuff. It's like macros on steroids, where they start to have more toward healthier and what they call healthier food, which is basically means less and less of choices and quantity, stuff like that. And so she got on the protocol, and I started with what we call the reward system, which like you can have carbs after you train, choose whatever you want. And she went completely nuts. Like pancakes and ice cream, and the picture looked awesome, by the way, but it looked like a rough day at the ice cream parlor. Let's put it this way, right? And but now she's realizing like, I think I'm overdoing it. I was like, all right. So, but by herself, not us telling her, just by herself. She's like, yeah, that's too much because I'm not hungry right away. And she started
You
to
don't
change
feel
her.
great after that.
So that the protocol what we saw is it changes people's relationship with food, and that is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
So I was very, very happy with that. So that to me is a huge behavior thing that people have with food is most of the time. That's why people get so emotional with all this.
Yeah. How does that get anchored though that deep in a person? Like,
Yes.
Those things.
Exactly.
Because I don't even
Yes, right.
It comes
Why?
from like something. I think things like, I mean, there is like we talk about the gut flora, but there's also things like it's coping mechanisms,
As
trauma.
well.
Like food seems to slide into that space for
Too
to
much.
many spaces. For
Too much.
people. Yeah.
Too much. And first of all, let's state that that's the thing is we use food for coping mechanism, but the fact is we don't need to eat nearly as much as we think. I think that's a myth we have to attack right away. Is the whole you weigh 165, so 75 kilos, and you think you need 4,000 calories a day, you're mistaken.
Yeah.
No, you don't. Because we survive on less, you and I. So there's an entire industry that is based on more, like more is better, more food, and that we need to eat every 3 hours. No, you don't. You know why? Because for 300,000 years of evolution, it has never happened.
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the most common things that we get as people are. I can always tell when someone is just starting the protocol.
Yes.
Because the questions I get
Macros
are actually pretty easy to answer. That's my favorite ones. Don't send me paragraphs and paragraphs to answer. But like I can answer a quick question, right? And when the question
otherwise you join the group.
Just one, and then it costs money. But
yes. Then you join the group because then we can answer questions.
yes.
Yeah.
But some of my favorite ones are ones where I can tell that they're just starting and they are confused. They don't know what to expect because they're only expecting what they've already experienced with food, which is like, well, what am I supposed to eat for breakfast? Like, you mean I can only have some fat and stuff before morning? Like, what is that even going to
do? I not stuff myself?
Yeah, like, what do I have for lunch? But I got to work. Like, what do I? And it's like, well, just follow these simple rules and don't deviate. And then you're not going to wake up in the morning going, I need 9 fucking eggs and potatoes and bacon and all that stuff.
Is there anthropology question? Is there any time in the history of mankind, which is about 10,000 years old, right? No, I mean, mankind is 300,000 years, but you know, civilization, 10, 15,000, where we have stuffed ourselves that much with that much choice. I think the biggest thing we need to explain is that most people look at nutrition based on today's standards.
Yeah.
But that's a mistake because that's not how we were built. We've been built over the last 300,000 years as hominids, and then the last 10, 15,000 years of civilization, but never built on what we have today. The choices
Look at
of
the last
food we have today.
Years. Let's say 90 years.
Plain.
And if you get just outside of that, you really are stuck with mostly regional everything.
Well, okay, commercial planes.
Yeah.
Right? I've been around for what, like 70 years? Well, no, because it's after World War II.
Yeah.
So,
So like all of a sudden now the world's very small.
Exactly.
And food is really accessible.
Food is accessible and choices are accessible, where it never happened before. If you look anthropologically speaking, you had one type of carb per culture.
Yeah.
The French had wheat for, 7,000 years? The Japanese had rice. South America was potato. But basically that was it. Like the Irish have potatoes, but it was introduced by the English. Most countries had one type of carbs. And then you had honey in the summer, fruits in the summer. So it was very seasonal.
Regional.
Right, but all year long was one type of carb. You had 3 types of meat. If you look at Europe, it was like what you have: deers, rabbits, boars,
here or there.
And so you have a few birds. You have few types of fish, but it was the choice was very limited.
Yeah.
If you look, and again, one type of carb, and then we basically started to do all the shit we do now. But so we cannot judge the human system based on today's choices, and I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah, because our body was not built with these choices in mind. This is a variable that
exactly.
All of those years of preparation, this was not the fucking end target.
And by the way, you could not eat every 3 hours back then.
No.
Because otherwise, when would you be in shape to fight? You don't always know when the fight is coming. This is an MMA.
Yeah.
You don't get to choose 6 months earlier who your opponent is going to be. This is basically constant threat all around you. If you eat every 3 hours, you're constantly in a parasympathetic side, which is you're in a socializing mood, which means you're not ready to deal with the world outside. Like, how do you feel after lunch? Ready to go into a fight? No, you would have to puke everything in order to fight, right? So that idea that we have to stuff ourselves every 3 hours, like you have to, no, we're not built like that. We're not built to sleep 8 hours straight. And we're not built to have food constantly every 3 hours in our stomach. That is not true.
Yeah. So where does this fit in as far as with, because we talk about this over a really, really long timeline, right? And there's an evolutionary component to human behavior,
no question,
right?
So let's go into that one.
And I remember mentioning, in the beginning of this podcast, when we first started the first few episodes, that I was almost, and maybe I just didn't go to college. Maybe I missed out on some of the more in-depth things. But my understanding of evolution growing up was purely based on sexual selection and survival of the fittest. That's what I thought the whole mechanism
Parts
really
of it
was.
is that.
Yeah, and of course that is part of it, right?
It is part of it.
Yeah, but the behavior side is much more than just human decisions. There's a little more going on there.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, you're not wrong when you say survival of the fittest and everything. That is the base of evolution, right? So if we look at evolution like a pyramid, right? The base of the pyramid is this. It's going to be basically who's the most successful specimen, right? And we have to understand that that first layer is built upon hundreds of thousands of animals over hundreds of generations. That's how this works, right? For example, when polar bears were in Antarctica, they were all brown. And then suddenly, random mutation, because it happens in nature, quantum mechanics, not going to go into that one. That's quantum biology, have fun with that one. Suddenly, a polar bear is white. All right, so he has better chance of hunting and surviving. But that took a fucking long time.
Yeah.
Right. So
for that guy to just slightly outbreed the people around him
and introduce
and for
the
his gene to be dominant.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but he was, we know now, he was the aberration back then, the first white polar bear.
Yeah.
He was a random mutation. But it worked better.
And from that moment to it even being, say, 50-50 is a massive amount of time and a massive amount of individuals coming.
Exactly. So that part of evolution, you have to understand, evolution does not care about you. Because you're born either white polar bear or brown, but the second you're that, you're not going to change. It's like you're born short, well, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Right, so that's why giraffe has such long neck, because over time they had to reach, the branches of the trees and all that stuff, and then they had a longer tongue, and so the taller giraffe did better. But that takes time, and time for evolution does not mean 100 years.
Yeah.
We're talking hundreds of generations, talking thousands of years, thousands of animals and everything. So that's the base of the system, and that's where the DNA comes in, and it's being changed slightly over sexual selection and stuff like that. But that's a very slow system that works very well. But if you were to build a system, you could not just have that, because you would have too many of them dying, right? Okay. It's not a good system. So we know that there's that very structured, solid base at the bottom of evolution, but on top there seems to be some leeway, right? So DNA, for example, you're born short, you're screwed. Sorry, like when you do wall balls and rowing, for 19.1, it's going to be really hard. Like you can't change that.
That's why I beat everybody else at it.
Exactly.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry.
Look it up.
9.5 rounds. But then we start to discover there's certain things like RNA now and things where it seems that the environment has an influence on behavior and also changes almost on a genetic level. We don't understand fully.
And they could possibly still be passed on hereditarily.
Yes, we don't understand fully how this works, but we're starting to study all that stuff. So now, that's basically a species thing, right? If you look, the evolution of the species is done through sexual selection and the survival of the fittest. That's a species versus another species. But within that species, you have to have some leeway for the individual of the species to deal with something that happens. Winter versus summer, starvation period, right? Global warming, all that shit, you're going to have to deal with rapid changes. Right? And there has to be a system in place to allow you to deal with that. Otherwise, the temperature changes and we all die.
Yeah, and the key word there is rapid changes.
Rapid.
Because this,
one generation,
the base of the pyramid is going, like there is really, there's no allowance for that.
No,
like
500 years.
Yeah. If
it'll
now
it'll
it's
take
winter,
hundreds of years. Yeah,
if there wasn't winter before and now it is, you're fucked. So there has to be a mechanism to allow you to adapt on a smaller scale.
You get 2 weeks, And so that's how basically I started to look at it going, okay, so there's 3 types of the nervous system. You have the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spine. You have the peripheral nervous system, right, which is everything outside of the spine. And then you have the enteric nervous system, which is the gut. The biggest thing with all this is always the vagus nerve, right, who connects everybody. It's like a super highway. And there's a number of things with the vagus nerve that are very interesting, but there's also certain things when I studied that I could not wrap my head around. For example, the Polyvagal Theory states that the dorsal vagus nerve is responsible for depression. That's where depression lives. It lives in the dorsal vagus nerve, right? Antisocial behavior, all that stuff. The problem with that is nature does not do anything negative. It's just everything has a function, right? Yeah. And you have to understand that the vagus nerve is, like for example, the dorsal is the oldest part of our nervous system, right? That's what we call the afferent part. The body to the brain. The vagus nerve is 80% afferent. It's 80% dorsal and 20% ventral. Ventral is head to the body. So the ventral is what allows us to socialize. That's what we've been building as mammals in order to live in a tribe. That's only 20% of the vagus nerve that is that. Most of the communication we get is through the afferent system, through the dorsal part of the vagus nerve. Yeah. So I was like, then how do you put depression in that? That sounds to me like that's just a dysfunction of the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas the job of the vagus nerve is to carry the information.
I would think just whatever your inputs are. Right?
Exactly, right. And so I was like, all right, so but obviously...
Can we pause before we go further?
Yeah.
When we talk about that, right, so the vagus nerve is moving. One question I would have for you is, is there any sort of filtration or processing of that information before it gets passed up along the line, before it gets to the vagus nerve?
Well, that's the thing.
Or is it being passed up as your body's perceiving it, and then it's sorted out somewhere else?
So vagus nerve go to the eyes, go to certain stuff like that. But it also, for example, connects the gut to the parasympathetic, to the peripheral nervous system, right? And so that's Dr. Porges, who's been studying that on the Polyvagal Theory, where it seems like the vagus nerve is linked to, it's like the superhighway of the body.
Yeah.
It links to everything. Anytime you have input, it's one way or another, it's going to go through the vagus nerve in order to go to the brain back and forth. Like the whole feedback loop seems to happen through the vagus nerve. Okay. So any processing of information will be through that.
Okay.
So for example, in the case of the ventral, right? So we know that helps you with socialization. Finding order. So that's the goal of evolution, is to get us to a more orderly state. So most of the behavior that we know goes through the vagus nerve, right? So that was a very important part, because you can tell how much the vagus nerve and behavior have hand in hand. So the dorsal part would be depression, and the ventral part will be socialization. That's the polyvagal theory. I was like, all right, but there's no reason for the dorsal part of the vagus nerve, the afferent system, to be in charge of depression. What is depression? There has to be a goal. Nature doesn't do anything without a goal. What is the goal of depression? I was like, maybe the depression is just dysfunction.
You mean it's not just to bum you out for no fucking reason?
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? That's a Christian view of God being an asshole.
Because there's something wrong with you.
If you look at me wrong, I wipe up your whole fucking city. Yeah. Kind of thing. Like, that's nature, right? Yeah. That's a very first...
And you were born naughty.
Exactly, and so sacrifice your son. That's a very Old Testament view of nature, basically. So to me, depression is a dysfunction, but then that means there is a functional part. There's something before depression that is functional, and then depression is just a dysfunction of that thing.
Yeah.
But so that thing goes through the afferent system, right? And studying the stuff more and more and more, so you start to go parasympathetic versus sympathetic, which is the peripheral nervous system, the polyvagal theory. And then I started to look more precisely at the gut, right? Because of the gut flora and everything. And that's called the enteric nervous system. And it led me to think, well, let me study it first. That's where I'll explain my train of thought. I think the enteric nervous system is actually responsible for behavior. It's the top of the pyramid that allows you to change behavior fast. Right? Very, very quickly. Yeah. That's the only part where that's where I think to me it's designed for. So we think the gut is only to digest food, but I think we're wrong. I think the point of the gut basically is to alter behavior quickly. The gut flora is 100 trillion bacteria, 1,000 different species with a genome that is 100 times more complex than ours, right? So imagine each species having its own voice. Imagine the combinations that would be possible just within the gut flora, just to affect the behavior through the nervous system, because that's how it's connected to the rest, right? To elicit a quick change of behavior. In the gut, so the gut flora is also a bunch of viruses, fungi, and microbes. We don't even know what they do. But I can tell you, by the way, funny story on that, the fungi, there's, I don't know if you've ever seen what a zombie ant is.
Yes.
Okay, that is the craziest shit.
It's one of my favorite things.
Isn't it? Okay, so we have to explain what it is. So you want to tell or I tell?
I'll let you tell it, because you're going to have more of the details. I only know it conceptually.
Oh my God. All right, so it's the bullet. Is that the bullet ant?
I don't know. It's just an ant.
Was that one?
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's a bullet ant. Basically, if he gets in contact with a certain spore, so it's a fungi name. Fuck, I just looked at it. Anyway, right? It starts to basically enter the ant and takes control of its body and its mind. Okay, so this is how crazy it is. It takes control of the ant, and basically it's going to drive the ant to go up a branch or whatever. And at some point when it's up the branch, it's going to force the mandibles to close onto the branch and to basically squeeze itself and stay there and die on top of the branch, on top of the colony. Yeah. From there, the fungus will start to grow out of the back of the skull, take 3 weeks to have a full extension, and from there will drop spores all over the colony, wiping all of it out. The fungus knows to go up. So it takes control of an ant, of his entire system, drives it up. How the fuck does he know what up is?
Right.
That's what I want to know. It's a fungus.
With its not having eyes.
It's a fungus. How do you know what up is? What's up for a fungus?
Yeah.
And then, so it drops up, and then he makes it lock, stay in place, and then grows, and am I the only one freaking out by this?
Crazy.
Like, it's completely, it takes control of the ant.
Yeah.
How the fuck does you know how to control it? You know that there's that particular fucking thing, that particular fungus, there's a special type of each for each insect in the forest.
Jesus Christ.
All right, so first of all, this is science fiction shit, but it's actually true. You can look at it. It's called zombie ants. And there's a number of fungus like that are parasitic in nature that control the host.
Yeah.
Right, so you have that, you have microbes that do that, and you have bacteria that do that. All right, and they're all in our gut. So when I joke about, say, we are venom, want to bet that we are?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my thing is individuality. So this is basically the species. I think all that stuff with task negative, like the central nervous system, that's a species in place. The monkey is a species, right? Mm-hmm. And it evolves very slowly over time through sexual, what do you call that? So, you know, survival of the fittest, yes. All that stuff. But the individuality of the human species, right, is in the enteric nervous system. So that's when the
actual expression of humanity is going to come
from that. Individual human, not as a species, but as an individual, lives in the enteric nervous system. So when I say we are venom, that's what I meant. I meant like as individuals, we are not the monkey. Because the monkey is basically a creature of evolution that the job of the monkey is to survive as a species.
Just to exist from one generation to the next.
As a species, right? Is to beat the other species. But there is also the individual that wants to live. And I think that basically comes from the enteric nervous system. So why do I say that? Because I saw, first of all, by reading the gut flora and its effects, you see, we talked about that in the lab podcast, but you see stuff that are absurd. Like, for example, taking you take a mouse upside down, I think I explained that, and it starts fighting. You give it the gut flora of a depressed person and the mouse stops fighting. You can change behavior of animals just by transferring the gut flora. You take one mouse that is aggressive, one that is passive, you change the gut flora and you change the behavior. And so I think that the goal of the enteric nervous system is not to process food, is to process behavior. Mm-hmm. And that food comes second. Because we have to go back to food 100,000 years ago. What would any change of food mean?
It would mean that your environment had to change. One way or another. The weather, where you are.
Starvation, no more fish. But that means that any change in the food would mean change in the environment. Yeah. That means a necessary change in behavior.
Yeah, that
because
you have to adapt now
exactly. Right. So there's a feedback loop no matter what between food and behavior. We know that. You get bored, you eat cashews. Yeah. Anybody? So we know that, but I think it goes further than that. I think it's behavior first, food second. That food is a language between us and the environment. Yeah. Because I don't think we need nearly as much food as we seem to think we do.
Well, when we've talked about this a lot with the nutrition stuff, is that food, with us having too many options, right? And when you mentioned food as a language, now when we're eating so much of this wide variety of shit, because I can get fried chicken, I can get tacos, I can get
kangaroo.
Everything. Yeah, I can get everything, and I could get it all.
Any carbs.
Yeah, any amount of carbs.
Rice,
and any variation
noodles,
of carbs.
Sugar,
wine,
potatoes,
anything.
Stuff you never had access to in your genetic background.
And I could have all of that within a day or two if I really tried hard and believed in myself.
Yes, but I'm sure you have tried at some point.
I think I might have. But it's very interesting when you mention though that like food is a language. When people start to clear up these issues, what people notice is that the phrase that I keep hearing more and more is it's like, now that I've removed all of this noise. Yeah. And that is very interesting. And I've heard it 3 or 4 separate people use the term noise to describe things that they didn't even notice. But now that it's gone, they realize they were getting all these signals and all this bullshit. And I think that's very interesting.
And what has everybody done, they all end up eating the same stuff. Mm-hmm. They found like, no, this works well for me. And now by themselves, they've removed the excitation of food. And they basically end up eating just the same stuff because that's what you're supposed to do.
Because people, and like I said this before, people from outside, their first question is like, well, I have this list of 175 foods that I make that I like to make sure I eat.
When do I get
and
to...
there's 15 superfoods listed in this article on the internet that I got to apparently eat too.
And when do I get to eat all that? I don't know. When do you get to snort cocaine?
Yeah.
Whenever you want, but there are consequences that go with it. Yeah, exactly. No, but like it's like they have to eat all of it. They have to. I'm like, you can have a glass of wine, doesn't mean you get to pound the whole bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
Right? You can have one aspirin, you get 15, you die.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a bit the same thing. Like, when do I get to stuff myself with this, is this? You don't, because you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Right? But like, so what I want to see me after is on a not paleontology, anthropological question is like, for example, look at how much socialization happens now compared to 100 years ago. The world population 100 years ago was, I don't think we were 1 billion people, probably less. I think we like, you know, quintupled in size at an accelerated rate, basically. But you take the world 200 years ago, like this.
I know this. I know there was still 6 billion people only, or maybe even less, like when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So we've gone up like over 1 billion in like fucking 15 years.
Yeah, I think there was less than 1 billion people. It wasn't that long ago. Anyway, so my point is, like, I would like to see the growth in socialization, like social media and everything, and consumption of protein, for example. I'm saying that because we know that protein is digested on the bacteroid side of the gut flora, and the bacteroid is also responsible for socialization. How do we know that? We had mice created completely in a sterile environment, which means no gut flora whatsoever. They were very asocial. We introduced bacteroids from a human, and then they became very social. We tried that with antisocial behavior from ASD, autism syndrome disorder. And then we got them far more social and everything. There is a relationship between bacteroids and socialization, because there's also a relationship between protein and the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, Polyvagal Theory, which means the ventral vagus nerve. So there's an entire relationship between bacteroids, socialization, and the vagus nerve, basically. All right, so as socialization increases, then so does the importance of the bacteroids. Therefore, so does the importance of socialization. So it seems to be like, and then therefore, so does the importance of protein.
So then the influence is then amplified as well.
Exactly. So yeah. I'm wondering if more socialization means more cravings of protein. Is that we're eating more and more, because we're eating amounts of protein we've never eaten before. The 300 grams a day, again, it's 1 kilo of steak a day.
Yeah.
Are you fucking insane? When?
Yeah.
All year long. That's insane. That's insane behavior. And people are not even that big. So the key for me is I want to see if basically what interests me in this is hunger and cravings, because that's what we saw the biggest differences. I think, so I tested that on myself, where I went to play pool in a fasted state. I explained that before. In a fasted state. And I realized that whenever I lose, I would get hungry. I would freak out and go like, I need to eat. Whenever I started winning, the feeling of hunger went away. That told me that hunger was not hunger. It was just me going from flight to fight. Flight is losing, fight is winning, right? So when I wanted to go from flight to fight, I felt the need to eat food. So maybe I wasn't hungry at all. I thought I was hungry, I wasn't. Maybe what it was is my enteric nervous system telling me to change my behavior. Instead of, I was in flight and my system was like, dude, go to fight.
Working, yeah.
This ain't working, you need to fight. And so I would start making more balls, and then I feel better, and back and forth. So maybe I was confusing hunger for food and hunger for a change of behavior.
Yeah.
Maybe that hunger was just an order to tell me not to get food, but to tell me to change my behavior.
So if I'm sitting on
that
my
would
ass
make more sense.
Watching television.
Yeah. And I'm bored.
And I'm not doing anything, and there's nothing to do. And I get this
order
to
change your behavior. Yes.
And it doesn't have much to do with what's in the fridge.
Yep.
Because we've all done it too.
Yep.
You open the door, you're like, I'll come back in 5 minutes.
I'll eat butter.
Yeah.
Come on, don't lie. You've been there too.
I don't know I honestly don't know. Well, no. I've had some, yeah.
I've eaten butter.
My favorite.
It was French butter. It was really good.
Like canned or boxed macaroni and cheese. But
tell me you wouldn't eat the butter we had yesterday. Or the day before. Come on, it was good butter.
So boxed macaroni and cheese, where it's like the seasoning powder, but you're supposed to
Did you cook it?
Hold on, but you're supposed to have butter and like milk in it, and we like wouldn't have milk because it was like in college and poor. So it's like, all right, well, just maybe extra butter. Is it kind of like milk? So you have like a whole stick of butter. It ends up just being like fucking buttery, cheesy paste noodles. But yeah, I have eaten a stick of butter.
Enough weed, and you can eat that.
Enough weed and it goes down pretty.
Exactly.
Actually, 2 boxes is possible, believe it or not. But anyway, that's as far as I go with a stick of butter, I guess.
Anyway, hope so. But the point was, maybe it's your system telling you to change your behavior.
Yeah.
Stop doing nothing.
Get up, dude.
Stop.
You haven't done shit all day. It's time to get out. Yeah.
So maybe we are associating that with a need for food, and we're wrong. Maybe he was never hungry. It was just a need for a change of behavior.
Yeah.
So emotional eating being the same.
Yeah.
Go deal with your shit.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm hungry. No, you're not. You need to change your behavior. But because it's one behavior, two food, there's a relationship between the two, and the second you don't change your behavior, it becomes about food.
Well, and it becomes patterning then at that point.
Exactly.
Then
now you're learning.
Then we're learning, and you're learning to do it the wrong way, and you're learning a coping mechanism. You're not even learning that it works. You're not getting rewarded. You're literally getting you're just taking this and associating it with, all right, now I'm just going to run from it.
But
just
no, but
flight,
plus,
flight,
imagine
flight.
how easy it would be. Imagine easy it would be if the first breaker is here, but the second is there. How easy it would be to associate that breaker with that breaker, right? So the second you don't change your behavior, oh, but food will do it. That's an easy jump. Yeah. And then there's so much choices of food, and it makes you feel so good because it changes things. So instead of adopting a new behavior, you adapt a new food.
Well, that's interesting too, because of the variety.
Yes.
Because of the variety, it actually, let's be real, if you only ever were eating 2 or 3 types of meat and 1 type of carbs, the urge, be like, listen, go eat. You're bored. It's like, not that fucking bored.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go hunt or something. Exactly.
A thinly sliced, plain piece of pork cooked in the 1 pan I have. And a bag of frozen vegetables.
Oh, by the way, cook 45 minutes. You're bored? Do something that needs 45 minutes to cook. You won't be that bored. Trust me, that'll make you think twice.
But if that's your only option, that behavior is not going to be that interesting, that appealing to you, that push. But if it's like, hey, you're hungry, do something about this, and you start scrolling through the delivery apps, you're like, dude, I can make some shit happen. I can make anything happen right now.
And by the way, new food, by definition, means a different reaction from the gut flora, because the different food we have 1,000 species. Yeah. You want to bet there's one.
So you're
for
almost going to reinforce it a little bit just because of the variance.
Yeah, maybe each. Let's say if the gut flora is responsible for behavior, that means 1,000 species. That means maybe there's 1 species per behavior. I don't know, but you get the idea, right? Imagine 1 species per behavior. And imagine 1 species per food. That means that you're not changing the behavior. All you need is a new food. That gut flora is like, I'm cool. I got what I wanted.
Yeah.
So it would be so easy to go to food instead of changing behavior. That would be, with the way we live now, the easiest thing would be not to change the behavior. It would be so much easier to change your food. Yeah. Whereas before, you want fish, you're going to have to go fucking walk, go to the river, fish, coming back, clean it, open it, cook it. It's such a different behavior.
Yeah, and if you're going to eat meat, you're either going to kill it or you're going to be the one cooking it.
Right, but even that. So you have to hunt, right? You have to kill the stuff. So you're getting your, everything, the bomb, because that fucking thing fought you back. And so you're cut everywhere, right? Yeah. And your wife is cooking. And so now she's there, there's socialization taking place. She's there, she's trying to patch you up from bleeding everywhere. But there's socializing, there's love in the room, everybody's happy. You can smell the food cooking. That takes an hour to cook. So now you're basically having a change of behavior, because now you're going towards socialization first. Yeah. Then that leads to you getting the protein. There's that too, is we never had food before action. There was always action first, behavior first, then food. Whenever you wanted food, you had to go fucking get it. Yeah. So there was always action first, then food, never the other way around. And so that's why I'm using the reward system base, because now that I introduced the idea of reward system, some are freaking out saying they're talking about the chemistry of it.
Before we jump into the reward system.
Let's finish this first.
Well, I want to clarify, because if I'm hearing you objectively, I want to make sure that I want to play the devil's advocate here, right? So what we talk often about with our nutrition stuff is we want to eat for what's coming, right? But then we kind of right now we're on the other side of that, saying, well, you also need to act ahead of time for what you're eating. I'm a little bit hung up on that, right?
So let's use, I can use protein as an example.
Let's pretend it's going to be protein, right?
Yeah, so we're going to have a big dinner with protein, right? Right, big dinner with protein, we know it's hard to digest. We need to be in the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, right? Because the digestion has to be popping in order for you to actually digest the protein. To be on the parasympathetic side, this is also socialization, right? That's a Polyvagal Theory. So that means that first I'm going to start socializing, right, to put myself in the mood, to start my digestion process going. So in a cultural type of way, that means I'm in the kitchen talking to the wife while she cooks, The kids are everywhere. The smell is starting to go. Like this is, in many cultures, this is the best room in the house where mom is cooking. Mama's cooking. Isn't that what it's about? Because you're in there, everybody's there, everybody's talking, there's a huge amount of socialization going on. That pushes you toward the parasympathetic side of the equation. So therefore, there's an action taking place first. That action will allow you to digest the protein correctly.
Gotcha.
And once you have the protein correctly, right, you get in, now you get the reward system, which is the healing process that takes place.
Okay.
And that's you going to bed, building muscle, healing, getting rid of all the stress of the day. So it was action to food for the reward system.
Okay.
So it's if you want, it's action, food, action.
Yeah.
So there seems to be
it's almost then like there is an action. Let's call it a state-based action that has to exist after we consume food or while we consume food, right? For everything to be ideal. Right?
Well, no, even before. So you have,
But so what I'm saying is like I know if I'm gonna eat a bunch of protein, I need to be socializing, chilled out, not stressed, right?
Exactly.
So I know that I'm eating for that next phase of time.
Yep.
So the action I need to take before is to
Yes.
prepare myself
Exactly.
to be into that state.
Yeah, exactly.
Which means I can't, just because I'm eating protein and hoping I'm gonna have 2 hours to chill, I can't come home, start a fucking argument with my wife, slam the fucking door,
in 10 minutes,
and then sit down and eat a steak and everything's going to be cool.
And then I'm going to go to bed and sleep all night. No, you don't. And that's actually something we saw in the group. It's like, well, I don't digest protein. And every single time it was that, they came stressed from work, get in the car, stress out, get home and eat protein right away because it's 9 o'clock already. And that doesn't work.
Or it's when it's too much, which is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, but because they were not socializing enough. Because they were not socializing enough. You want a lot of protein, socialize a lot first. So it's basically a triple action in that sense that need to take place. You see that for the same for carbs, right? So you take a lot of carbs and then you start to train. I'm like, yeah, but what if I just woke up from a nap and I get a lot of carbs? It's gonna crash me even more. So what you do is you get to the gym, you start warming up, and you get into the mindset of I'm gonna fuck shit up today.
Yep.
I'm gonna start killing, I'm gonna do the weight and everything. And now you start to get your mindset up, you start warming up, you start moving, and you get to that stage where you're like, I'm ready to fuck shit up now.
And then you
get the carbs.
And then you can use that feedback loop at that
exactly.
point.
So if you need the carbs.
If you try to plug that in
beforehand,
disconnected from the situation,
exactly,
you're kind of left on an island.
So exactly. So that would be the point, is there has to be a connection between your action and the food. So it's not enough to say, I'm going to do that. You're not there yet. So your body doesn't understand that. So eating for what's coming means that the second you start taking the actions necessary for what's going to take place, then you can start eating based on that. So it's socializing first, then protein, then the reward system. So for carbs, what I do now is I get here, I start to get myself into the mindset. If I can, I'll do the whole workout in fully sympathetic because I want to fuck shit up. And then I can get myself the reward of carbs, because then it makes me basically heighten me. It's a learning mechanism which allows for the dopamine and oxytocin to start releasing, which makes me feel even better.
Yeah.
So there's an entire idea there with the reward, but basically you could do like warm up, start to get the warm up. Then once the workout is going and you get into a sympathetic, then you get the honey, which will heighten your state.
Okay.
And the reward will be, for example, could be you get a PR.
Cool.
Right? And then you could get a booze or whatever to even heighten that feeling and make sure that the next time you come about, you even have a stronger reaction. So we use it as a loop, if you want.
Cool. I didn't want to have us walk into a situation where it's, now we got to act before we eat, because I thought we were eating for what's coming.
Yeah.
The war of semantics on social media.
Yeah, and when we say you have to eat for what's coming, it's because you know more or less what your day is going to look like.
Yeah.
So the idea would be that, but that doesn't.
That way you can prepare.
You can prepare, but that.
But it's not always one step to prepare.
Exactly. There's actually the action, right? So again, it's because we take food on an island.
Yeah.
It's just food. No, it's not. Food and behavior go hand in hand. That's what the Enteric system tells me, is they go together. So if you don't have the proper action, you can't have the food. And so if you're in the wrong, you're in freeze, you have carbs, it's gonna get even worse. You're stressed out, you have protein, it's gonna get even worse. So you can't be stressed out, have protein, and think you're gonna sleep all night. You're gonna have to calm down, chill, get in parasympathetic, then you can get protein, then you'll have the max effects of it. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very important. So that introduces a new layer of stuff, which we have to do it gradually, because if I throw everything out there for you all, you're going to freak out even more. So sometimes they're like, but you said, yes, I'm being more precise.
Yes.
Because I'm introducing ideas as I go. It goes actually way further than that.
And I will say, if you're here this far into it, right, and you've watched all the nutrition stuff to this point, and you're hearing this and you still haven't started, don't start with all this yet. Find a baseline for a little bit. You know what I mean?
That's why I'm introducing new ideas slowly, because you guys don't understand. You won't even hear most of the stuff I work on ever. Like probably 80% of the stuff I work on, you never hear about it, because some of the stuff is so out there. But even the Carl Friston, which we'll do a podcast about, like it's the greatest thing ever to go into. And let me put it this way, very smart people leave the room wherever the guy speaks because they're so frustrated about what he says.
My favorite thing on that subject is where I just, all I can do is look through his material, and it's like I just have like a screwdriver, and I just kind of chip out a few of the things that I think I can handle. And that's all I work with. Because
everybody does that.
Jesus. So, but anyways, Julian had asked me, this is actually probably like 2 months ago. He's like, we got to do a podcast on Friston stuff.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, cool. I would love to look really fucking stupid for an hour on YouTube. That's great. So I've spent that time trying to learn it. And again, only with the screwdriver. Because if you try to start taking bites
you know
out of
what
that
I love
shit,
about that guy
crazy.
is that everybody only goes with a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
It's like, don't even bother. It'll bury
Because
you.
you think I'm crazy.
So we're going to get all the background and stuff into Friston's stuff later, and that's where the reward structure.
Translate.
That's the background. That is the like this reward system thing is a learning mechanism and how it influences.
It's
like
a
that
Friston
exists
thing.
Based on pure
Carl
intelligence
Friston's
and Friston's work.
And that's the problem with that, is they look at it from a chemical perspective, and the reward system is not that.
No.
The reward system is a Carl Friston thing of prediction versus expression.
Yeah.
So I'll translate it.
And there is a cool chemical component with it.
But that goes after.
Neat, but it's after.
That's how the system works.
Exactly.
Right? But that's not why the system works.
Yeah.
There is a deeper understanding that needs to be had on that one of how the prophecy system works. And to understand the reward system, you have to understand that this is what the chemistry will. This is the Friston model. When you go from the reward back to original action. Yeah. And you have to understand the Friston stuff to understand the reward system.
So let's talk specifics on the surface level of the. Would you burp into it?
Yes, I did.
No, dude.
Sorry, you have to erase that.
I've been farting into my mic the whole
there you
time.
go. With your beard, you can
yeah. No. Let's talk about like the surface level of the reward system, right?
Yeah.
About like how exactly that would get used in different applications.
So it comes from we're going to go into chemistry for once.
Okay.
Right. All right. So how long do we have?
Time.
Okay.
I think we're about 40 minutes.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. So
if anyone wants to look on there and tell me, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Because I can't tell. 50. All right. Okay. I can do that in 10 to 15. I can do that. So a lot of it came from a chemistry perspective. The problem is serotonin. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter, right? And by the way, it's a neurotransmitter, so it has everything to do with behavior in the sense of that's my stuff about the lobsters and how serotonin allowed them to go back to fighting and stuff like that. So there's a huge component between serotonin and behavior. 95% of the serotonin in the body is produced in the gut, in the enteric nervous system. That's why it's called the second brain, right? Less than 5% is actually in your brain. So there's an entire thing based on that. And they put the serotonin in the parasympathetic nervous system, which I never understood. Everything that I read about shows the serotonin in the fight mode, right? As usual, the sympathetic is not just fight and flight, like they're the same thing. Yeah. Everybody takes those two as the same thing. So they say when you're in the sympathetic, you're stressed. That's not true. A sexual orgasm is a switch to sympathetic. So you can call that stress if you want, but then there's a positive stress and a negative stress. Yeah. We say cortisol is a stress hormone. That's not true. That's a flight hormone. When you have an orgasm, you don't produce cortisol. You produce massive amount of endorphins. So it doesn't work like that. Oxytocin is being produced after a sexual orgasm. So you're going to have to explain to me how that works with cortisol, because you can't have both. So see, there's a number of stuff like that don't work well. Also,
I think those things don't add up either, because they draw such a hard line in all of it. You know what I mean? It's either or. There's
no, but plus the stuff with serotonin that doesn't work. It blocks cortisol. So that's why they want it in the parasympathetic. The problem with that is serotonin is a vasoconstrictor, which is sympathetic based.
Not ideal.
Yeah, it helps. Exactly. Prozac, right, is based on serotonin, and this is something that cuts all sexual desire, right, because the vasoconstrictor and all that stuff. But then if he was on the parasympathetic, he should allow you to get a hard-on, not block it. There's a number of stuff like that where it's what it does on lobsters allow them to go back to a fighting posture, external torque, sympathetic reaction. It seems that serotonin is associated, not just a sympathetic reaction, a fight reaction. And that's the difference I want to make, is that I'm not saying serotonin would be a flight. I'm saying cortisol, for example, would be a flight hormone, but that serotonin would be a fight neurotransmitter hormone. It's kind of in between. Right, and so that was a very important idea, because if we look at the 4 states, freeze to flight to fight to flow, right? My idea was cortisol is being produced in flight, and then you change the behavior, you go toward fight, which means you deal with the shit, you produce serotonin, which is what we saw during aggressive behavior, that allows you to block the effect of cortisol to ensure you that you do your best during the fight. Once you win the fight, that's a Carl Friston thing, right? Which means whatever happens feel better than it was supposed to. You switch toward the flow state, and there, this is where you see you start to produce dopamine and oxytocin. What is oxytocin? Oxytocin is a bonding agent. It's something that happens in a social environment, like a mother breastfeeding a kid. So when she's there, oxytocin does 2 things. Allows her to stay like that without moving for an hour, right? Because oxytocin is zone you out completely, and it also creates a bonding feeling between the mom and the kid. That social bonding that happens during breastfeeding, that's oxytocin. The same oxytocin is being released when you have a sexual orgasm with the right partner. So if you look, orgasm is a switch to fight, right? And from there, if it feels better than you thought it would, which means you found the right person, that brings you back toward flow. And in flow, oxytocin is being produced, and that bounds you to the person next to you that you look. That's why people, after love making with the right person, they look each other in the eyes. You won't do that with a person you're just banging on the side.
It's an Uber.
Yeah, exactly, like by this. But with the right person, you'll start looking in the eye, because that's a bonding agent that we do to get the prediction right, to bound the prediction. Yeah. That's a Carl Friston thing. But there's prediction and expression, that's how we do, right? And so once you find the right person, you produce oxytocin to bond yourself to that person in a social way, so you can recreate the win.
Is it really just to, like you said, recreate the win?
Yeah.
Is it really, it's just a matter of reinforcing the patterning that led you up to that point?
Yeah, because it worked.
Yeah.
So we have 2, if it works, there's a hormone for that, which is oxytocin. If it doesn't, there's a hormone for that called dynorphin. So there's really a way to wipe out the prediction, and there's a way to make the prediction stick. Yeah. And the prediction, basically a win. When you win, you'll go toward oxytocin and you'll stick. So breastfeeding, right, bonding agent, the right mate, sexually bonding agent. And if you don't, you go toward dynorphin, which is released when you're about to die, because your prediction sucked. Yeah. You're about to die, it didn't work. So now we need to reset everything and produce a new prediction.
Can we do an example, like a real walkthrough example, say in training of something like this? So, I don't know, let's just, I want to go over like a hypothetical actual correction or something that we would use with the reward system to do. So, I don't know if you have any examples specifically that you know off the top of your head, or if you want me to just make one up.
Yeah, go ahead and make one up.
So let's just say we've got somebody who, I don't want to get into one we've already hashed up. Let's say you got someone who just can't. Let's go specifics about Andy's story.
Right.
Let's go real specific on that.
Yeah.
So Andy had tons of trouble finding his hamstrings.
Yeah.
Tons. Andy had come into, that was kind of the target of that training session.
Yep.
It was like, this is what we're going to do. You rode him pretty hard, and we talked, that's in the bonus episode for 15. So you can check out that if you haven't seen it yet. But you get all the way through that session, which is we'll call it a skill session, if you will. You know what I mean? Because while it is intense, he's not, quote unquote, fighting for his life. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't that
It was skill because it was coordination based.
Yeah, coordination. Yeah, not the way I view it. I view anything fight or flight as it's either violence or it's skill, is the way I train. So,
the fight and flight is the violence. That's the cloak
That's
off.
the violence.
That's
and
the cloak off.
skill.
Everything else is skill.
Yeah. So what? But anyway, so he goes through that and finally is able to find it. Whether he found it a lot and intensely, some people may only find it a little bit. Okay. But he found what he wanted to find with that session, and then what do you do after that?
So I went at it from this perspective, like that's prediction versus expression. We'll do a podcast on the Carl Friston thing. The idea was you're going to make a prediction based not on the outcome of something, but based on how something is going to feel, right? That's very important. It's never based on the outcome. It's only based on your expectation, right? Is this going to feel this way or that way, right? So he goes into it, and I'm telling him, like, what I'm going to make you do is find your hammies. He's like, yeah, okay. He goes into it with this expectation going, I'm going to feel them. Yeah, I know how to do that. It's all good. So he's like, yeah, whatever. And then I'm like, nah, that's not finding them. Like, you're not doing shit. So now he's starting to get into a sympathy. So he started in flow saying, yeah, I'm with coach. I'm happy. Everything is good. I'm socializing. Yeah. Then I'm like, fuck you. That's not finding your hammies. Like, do a lot more work.
Disappointing Julian.
Yeah, exactly. So now he's getting mad. Now he's getting mad at himself because now he goes to fight going like, I need to do better. And now we're 20 minutes in and he's not doing better. He can't find the hammies. So now he's going to flight going like, I want to leave the place. Right? And then pretty much he ended up, like he didn't quit. So he kept himself in flight. Why? Because he's feeling worse than he thought he would. Yeah. He thought he would find the hammies. You know where the hammies are. He's a coach. He's doing that. Okay. And then he's feeling far worse. So he's feeling far worse than the expectation that he had for the session. So that means now he's going down this way. He's going into flight. Right? And so anger allows him not to quit, not to go toward freeze, because that's where he wanted to go. But so right now he's in basically super stressed, super anxious, and the cortisol is pumping. So he's feeling like shit. That's the point. The only way you change that is you change behavior, is you go to fight. So now he's in fight and the serotonin is pumping, and so now he's getting really angry. And then finally the anger got directed toward him and he found the hammies. So once he found the hammies, he was like, oh my God, like, I've never felt this before. Like, I didn't even know. So now he's feeling better than he thought. Yeah. Because that went way past what he thought was going to happen, right? And when that happened, he went from the serotonin fighting anger to the flow state where the dopamine and the oxytocin started to burning, going like, I found my hammies. Hey, I found my hammies. And so what I did is, then I created a reward system, which means because he was toward more the parasympathetic, toward the flight, I gave him saturated fats to enhance the feeling of safety, of, oh my God, I found it, of the victory, of the win. And that I made the win even bigger. So he got basically the oxytocin pumping and the dopamine. He was like, oh my God, I'm all happy. And then he was happy for an hour. The reason I created the reward, it was to create more oxytocin to bound him toward
the feeling
of finding his hammies as a win. Why? Because then next time he does the hammy, like, I want to do that again.
Because even if he were to find them, not all the time, but let's say everything goes as it does, right? He stays in the game, gets all the way through, ends up still finding them, and it isn't reinforced, there's a chance, and granted, he still may have to fight for it the next session, right? But there is a chance that he may still have to go through that same level of fight.
No, or
again.
even he'll just like it less.
Yep, and whereas here, because you've reinforced it, it's almost like it's going to fast track him.
Remember, what I want to do is change behavior.
Yeah.
The bigger I make this, the better it is to change the behavior. If I want to change the behavior, like, because now he's connected to his hammies in a way, like you want to find them all the time.
And then you're not fighting an uphill battle because it's not something he doesn't want to do.
Exactly. I've changed the behavior. To change the behavior, you need to go here and have the oxytocin pumping to link him to the correct prediction. Because before he had the wrong prediction. Like, I know where my hammies are. No, he didn't. Because all he did was to feel a little bit, but he didn't fucking feel them, right? So I had to wipe out the prediction that existed, which means putting basically into freeze, almost there, right? So that's dynorphin, that's another problem. I put him into freeze, or basically the prediction didn't work, and then we work our way back up, and now I recreated a new prediction. So I took a wrong prediction, basically went down here, to crush a prediction.
Took it all the way to its end.
And then I created a new one. And now what I did with the reward system is I cemented the new prediction. So it's behavior modification.
It's also interesting is because, side note really, is that the intention that he had going into it
was wrong.
Well, no. I mean, it seems to me like it was the same. This is my interpretation. Is he goes in, oh, they want me to find my hammies. I'm going to find my hammies, right?
Yeah.
For what he thought he was going to find, like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's just what he found was not what he thought.
That's for sure.
He's like, oh, that's more than I
bargained for.
But you know what he's going into when he goes into this the next time? I'm going to find my hammies. Yeah. Except the reality of that now matches what reality is.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
So we changed his prediction.
Yeah.
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 And the
so while the words are still the same,
yeah,
the reality of
the
what that
intent
means
is not.
very
Yeah,
different.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's all prediction versus expression.
Yeah.
Right. The prediction was wrong and his expression was wrong. So I had to change both. So I had to change the behavior, and then I used food to anchor the reward system. You could use other stuff. It's just food was easier. It was just to get to that state of flow where dopamine, oxytocin, all that stuff, because now you know the new prediction expression model, the new prophecy model, is the correct one.
Yeah. And before we
am I fucking with things like mind control? Yes, I am.
Before we wrap up, it still is important to emphasize too that by reward we don't mean what they say when they're like, go out and treat yourself. It's not what this
that's
is.
Not what
that's
this
so
is.
often it's
yeah,
like
then now they like can I?
You know?
Yeah. So it's mostly women, by the way. But every time it was like, so I can have half a chocolate cake.
Yeah.
We're going back to
I can order a large pizza now.
Yeah, it's like when can I snort cocaine?
Yeah.
We're going back to that. It's like that's not what I said.
Yeah.
It's like well, because there's women literally say, why are you advising people to have Nutella crepes and chocolate milk? Then I'm like, I'm not. I said I did what I was doing at the time, why I was doing it, what the reward system is. But they're taking it. She was asking me like, so is it better to be healthy and eat good food, or to be lean your stuff eating shitty food? I was like, I never told people to eat shitty food. No. Where do you get that from? Yeah. No, but that's what she read. It's like, oh, I should have reward system. I should have Nutella crepe and as much sugar as I can have. I was like, I never said that.
Yeah. You really just need to have what you need to have.
No, but by the way,
what I mean?
There's a difference between the carbs that I have during the training session to fuel, which comes into the reward system to a degree, because usually if you need fuel during your workout, that means you're going into flight. So if I do conditioning, I use fuel to keep myself in fight. Or if I need...
because you want to quit so hard.
Yes, that's because it's conditioning. But let's say I start to fail energy-wise, and that, to me, that's still a neurological problem, but let's say it's a chemical one. I still think it's neurological. But anyway, could use the fuel then to fuel like a 3-hour lifting session. I probably would need carbs just to keep fueling me, right? That's not the same thing as a reward system. Those are two completely different systems. One is just to fuel a session. The other one is a reward system to bound the prediction.
Yeah, one's almost an emergency, honestly.
Let's be honest. Like I just need fucking sugar. Yeah.
And the other one's to make sure you don't end up in that fucking situation.
Yeah, exactly. The other one is to make sure that you're going to come back and do it again.
Yeah.
What happens if I have a 2-hour best session ever, but just murder myself without a reward system? You might be less likely to want to go back to the gym the next time.
My favorite way of looking at the deal is actually, I'll use either, for my reward after a training session, I'll use either about 2 shots of whiskey and water. Yep. Just because I still have to walk a little bit to get home. And so it's really nice. You feel a little buzz.
Yep.
And then you can almost...
go uphill.
I got to walk up a lot of hills. Yeah. But I feel like I can almost... objectively look on my trainings, like reflect on my, like, oh, it was good. You know what I mean? It's just the power of the right amount of whiskey. Yeah. It's just perfect. But outside from that, the thing is, I don't ever eat chocolate. I don't ever really crave sweets.
I can't do sugars anymore.
But I actually like the idea because I'm not ever hungry after training. And so I like the idea of actually just knowing that I'm going to have one piece of like some fucking really, really sweet just chocolate that I would never, ever, ever try. And that's, for example, and that's what I do. So I get done, and it's one piece. And so unless you weigh more than me, let's don't get unreasonable here with your rewards, right?
Yeah, it's not have the chocolate cake. And by the way, I can't have sugar anymore.
Yeah.
Like it fucks me up now. So, but the drinks I find work really well. So usually after training, we go get a couple of drinks, a whiskey or whatever, and then that puts me in a great mood for like the next 2 hours, and then I murder dinner.
Yeah.
Like that has, as a reward system, the alcohol has worked really well for me.
Yeah.
And I don't drink normally. So that was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But by the way, that doesn't mean a bottle of whiskey.
No.
Again, don't say that I said that because I didn't.
Not an open door.
Yes, I'll put it on Instagram to make sure people don't misquote me. No, you can't drink a bottle of whiskey.
You can if you put your mind to it and believe in yourself.
Yeah, you can even chug it, I'm sure. But that's not, I did not say you should.
But cool, man. Well, this is actually really neat for me because this ties in now. I mean, we've got a lot of this part of the feedback loop with the nutrition stuff that we've been doing before. And adding the reward system to me seems to tie in now almost everything else that we like. You know what I mean? It's got everything really, really close on the nutrition and training side.
There's one more thing that I need to, there's one more. The loop is almost closed. No. It's the afferent system in the small muscle versus large muscle group. That's the whole physiotherapy versus Eastern medicine, and where That closes the loop. That'll be one in itself. Yeah, there's one.
We're gonna
more.
make more people mad this year.
I'm just saying, I know how to close the loop now, and we can do better. That's all I'm gonna say.
I like it.
But that'll be another podcast.
Well, that'll be a time for next week. Or maybe not next week, but the next few weeks. Well, I'll get the boring stuff out of the way. You can find Julian at StrongFit1 on Instagram. You can find me at Tyler F. and Stone. Go to strongfitequipment.com. We now have the European version. StrongFiteQuipment.eu. You also can go to strongfitequipment.com.
But you're going to pay for shipping.
Well, no, I mean, I think there's a pull-down menu you can go to and select Shop from Europe if you go into the store. So that's strongfitequipment.com. There also is strongfit.com, which is where everything else is.
And we're going to redo it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Of course we are.
We're just getting so many things now with all the...
By the way, in April 1st, we're starting an auto-regulation training group.
Yes, so the same types of things that we're doing with
nutrition. We're going to do it for training, which means like you bring your own programming if you want to, and then we'll show you how to use your programming to its fullest. Yeah. What the intent is, and how to get intensity, and what you should get out of it.
Yeah, which is probably my favorite new thing that we're going to be doing, because it's a totally different thing. Yeah. Everyone's selling programming, and everyone's good at programming.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean?
But it's like nutrition. It's like macros. Yeah. Macros don't do shit. Macros are just a way to control how much you're eating. That's all this is, really. Yeah. It's the same thing for programming. Is to force you back to the gym and make sure you're going to do enough work or too much, depending on the programming, right? But that doesn't mean you get the intent behind it. So it's food digested versus food ingested. Training is the same. It's training ingested versus training digested. We're going to help you digest your training.
Well, and it can be then aligned with what you really want. You know what I mean? Like, that's the hard thing. It's like,
that's true.
It's like if are you trying to be jacked and just be jacked and have a
which is fine, by the way. We're not criticizing.
You also then want to minimize your inputs because you don't want to wreck your shit in that process. Yep. Do the right amount of work.
You'll hold
make
water.
It easy on yourself.
You'll hold water. Yeah. If you get stressed and do too much,
and if you want to get strong at all costs, all right, there's going to be some trade-offs to be made. But that's the nice thing about this is we can balance everything.
Yeah, but please don't come and say I want to be lean, jacked, no steroids, but strong as shit, and this and this. And
I want to get taller.
Yes, exactly. I want to gain 20 pounds of muscle, but no fat. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. So I think a lot of people also do programming without knowing what the programming really entails, what the intent is, and also what they want.
Yeah.
They want everything. Like that's the problem with total society anyway. But you can't be everything. You can be anything, but you can't be everything. So you're going to actually have to make choices. Yeah. So you can train a little bit of everything, but then you won't be great at anything, which is also totally okay. But whatever your goals are, we want to help you get to that. So we'll be training ingested versus training digested.
I like it. That'll all be coming up soon. Keep an eye out for that on Facebook, Instagram at StrongFit1, Facebook, the StrongFit community group. If you're watching and you're not joining, you're fucking up. So, we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot for listening.
Bye, guys.
Groovy.
Good. Calf freestyle coming up.